let's get into the album. It's great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today.
Oh, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. So before we get into the new album, I want to know first and foremost, 5 years ago, we were really wrapping our heads around this pandemic. There was so
Mm.
much that was going on. And I'm curious, ultimately, how did you survive the pandemic and how has it influenced the way that you do things as a musician now?
Yeah, good, great question. Um, because the pandemic was pretty fundamental to it, which enabled a big shift in my creative workflow, and my work life and family life and all kinds of things. Of course, I mean, it's an understatement, isn't it? It was a radical shift. Um, and there were many good things that came out of well, that came out of the pandemic, which of course seems a bit glib to say,
Yeah,
uh, because obviously it was heartbreaking for so many people, and it was scary, wasn't it? It was a scary time,
yeah,
and for those of us who took it seriously, um, it having to just like all those restrictions that were in place, we weren't allowed out. We were, ordering food in and washing all the packages and, crossing the road when we were, oh, there's someone coming on the pavement and cross. Listen, I'd got young kids and they were very young at the time. And I think it must have had a very, like fundamental impact on the way they perceive the world.
yeah.
I am with my other hat on, I'm associate professor of music at University of Nottingham. This is my office at the university. And at the time, I was director of teaching. And so we had an incredible shift from in-person teaching to online, um, which was really hard, really difficult because a lot of us academics are not used to that world. And so we were forced into this world, and it brought us all this technology like that we're using today, Zoom, again, lots of positive things came out of it, but yeah, it was hard. Um, at the time, I was between houses. I was living in a very small terrace house, like squashed in between other houses, building site on one side. I was trying to work from home. We were homeschooling the kids. On one level, it was horrendous, and hearing all the stories of people who were, you know, yeah, going through terrible times. I just put my dad into a care home, unfortunately, so there was that going on. Um, but in terms of the good things that came out of it, and we'll get onto the creative aspects and the music
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah.
Wasn't it good that alluding to our conversation we just had about society, that people really came together and supported each other and had an appreciation for each other, for their neighborhoods, for staff that didn't normally get a look in, medical staff at, the NHS in the UK, um, the bin men, delivery drivers, I think everyone suddenly we had an appreciation for things we perhaps took for granted. Peace and quiet. I remember just being able to go out and just hear the birds, and a lot of people talk about that, don't they?
Yeah.
The peace and quiet that we had, and the air was suddenly fresh and clean because we didn't have hundreds of petrol and diesel engines like clogging up the air. And um, but in terms of I guess leading me to the creative kind of side of things. At first, as I say, because of all that aforementioned stuff that was going on in terms of my work life, I was kind of, and family life, right, which I'm appreciative of, but I was kind of jealous of all these people that were like, "Hey, I'm on lockdown. I've been furloughed. My wage is being paid by the government. I can just make music. I can create things. I can cook. I can do gardening." And I was like, "Well, I'm even more stressed out than I was before." But looking back, I really did take advantage of that in this small, noisy terrace house that I lived in with my family. We did have a piano, and I ended up just writing loads and loads more music.
Yeah.
And my son, who was very young at the time, just given him a saxophone. He was 7, 8 at the time. He was really getting into jazz, And so I was going kind of going on a bit of a journey with him, exploring, like he was into all the things I was into at that age. Sonny Rollins and Miles Davis and Herbie Hancock and stuff. And so I was going on this exploration, like showing him all these cool tunes that he was genuinely like really interested in. And so that was brilliant. And I was sort of feeding that into having jams and composing, and to have my little buddy, my little son who was like, yeah, exploring jazz with me, and I ended up writing lots of tunes. And I've always been uh, into music with melody. Like I consider myself a jazz musician and composer. Uh, but music is such, it's such a wide um, area, isn't it? Of course. I mean, it goes without saying. And when I grew up in the sticks, like in rural Suffolk, East Anglia, in the countryside, as far from diversity as you can get. And yet, uh, I was touched by music of Miles Davis, by Herbie Hancock, by, Chet Baker, by all kinds of things. Um, and but as well as all the other stuff that all my mates were into, and that was a lot of pop music. It was a lot of jazz, soul, funk, just rock, progressive rock,
Yeah.
everything, anything that had a groove, anything that had melody, that had some kind of meaning, I was really into. And although it's taken me a long time I guess, realize that jazz was really becoming my thing. Looking back, it was, in hindsight, it was always clear that that was the path I was going to. But having taken in all this, wonderful like melody, the Tin Pan Alley stuff, the pop music of the 80s and the grooves of the 70s, and uh, I was exploring. Like I didn't pick up a bass, like I'm a bass player, but I didn't pick up a bass until I was 17, 18.
Yeah.
I used to get like magazines and had transcriptions in, and I was like learning all these bass lines from classic disco songs. I'd never heard the records, but I was kind of learning all these like, Bernard Edwards lines and Nile Rodgers stuff, and um, so I don't know. I feel like we're getting off the topic of what you were asking me.
No, no, no. It's good. You hit a lot of dominoes that were a part of me getting into your history of
Mm.
Electric Gumbo and even the new album it's on. So you kind of gave me kind of a skeletal. So I'm curious, how did this band come about and how have you evolved to this sound that has been put on It's On? How did that happen?
Okay, yeah. So um, I will answer that by again seemingly going off on a bit of a tangent
Yeah,
because I guess I'm a late developer. As I said, I didn't start playing bass until I was 17, 18. Um, I went to university to study music, but that was classical music. I was a French horn player. I came out of it really pursuing that jazz thing. Now, in lockdown, I was writing a lot of music. I just formed a band called Sharp Little Bones, which is a trio essentially, that forms part of the house band of Peggy's Skylights, which is a award-winning venue in Nottingham. It's a fantastic jazz venue, and I'm one of many sort of musicians that form various house bands there. Uh, and so I'd formed this band called Sharp Little Bones, which was a trio with Andrew Wood on drums, Woody on drums, and Paul Dietz on piano, and I was playing electric and upright bass. Our first gig was playing half Herbie Hancock music and half original compositions, and then the next gig was all original compositions, and every gig since then has been original compositions.
yeah,
And I think again, going back to circling back to this question about lockdown. I just wrote so much music. A lot of it went into the Sharp Little Bones album, and the first album we put out on Ubuntu Music was a double album. We went into the studio to record maybe a track, maybe an EP. We ended up with a double album. We got Tony Kofi to come in and play saxophone, and Martin Hummel sadly passed away um, recently. Um, uh, was yeah was was amazing. He showed so much. support and love for the project, and I'll be eternally grateful to him for that. But he suggested putting it out as a double album. Um, but going back to your question specifically about Electric Gumbo, I think I was also writing a lot of music that was uh, beyond the scope of Sharp Little Bones. That was perhaps more electronic, that was perhaps more funky, uh, that allowed me to play my electric bass rather than the upright. Um, and I'd also written a lot of tunes back in the 2000s. I was sort of commissioned to write adverts and library music and all kinds of stuff. Um, I was involved in a few projects where I was arranging or composing, and as a result, I had a lot of tunes on my hard drive that were just sitting there. And I, I don't know, this is what I always say to my students is, create a library of ideas that you can refer to and take the time to turn them into fully fledged songs. So I was trying to take a bit of my own medicine there
Yeah.
and think, well, actually, do I? I believe in this stuff. I genuinely think, really proud of some of those tunes, why they just sat there on my hard drive,
Yeah.
gathering digital dust.
Yeah.
So it started off as really just a project to bring them into reality. I had some drum samples, and I was playing bass, and I was writing melodies and chords, and and it's gradually it all came together into what could be an album. And I played it to various people, and they're like, yeah, you should do something with this. However, one of my manifestos, one of the things in my producer manifesto is where it's possible to have real people playing real instruments, you should you should do that. Where
Yeah.
budget, time allows.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I was doing a favor for a really good friend of mine, incredible drummer from Lincoln called Stevie Smith. I was doing some mastering and mixing for him, playing a bit of bass for one of his projects. And it's like, yeah, in return, rather than pay you, can I play some drums for it? It's like, yes, I've got just the thing. And it turns out he was perfect for this. So in 2 days, we got him into the studio here, mic'd up his drum kit, and I'm so glad we did that. So
Yeah.
just to have live drums, it's what it's all about, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
I have had some projects in the past where it's been me on my own with a bass, some pedals, a sequencer, and that's cool, but it's not much fun.
Yeah.
What I love what the moments I live for are those moments on stage where you're interacting with other musicians and magic comes out of nowhere, and it's like that communicate you know what I'm talking about, that
Yeah.
communication with other musicians that take you into unexpected places.
Yeah.
So uh, that's what I was striving for with this project. Even though it started off as a studio project, my music, my programming, my production, it really came to life when I started to get other musicians on board. Now, in hindsight, and we've just done it. We've done our launch gig at Peggy Skylight with a six piece, and you know, I'd kind of, I wish I'd started with that concept now, getting all those musicians together and taking it into the studio, because the direction of it is going is so exciting. And I can't wait to do more with this sort of current live lineup. However, I'm really proud of the record. It's got so many guest artists on it. I was just like, let's not just get the drums, let's also get some horn players. So uh, there's an incredible young musician who's from Nottingham called Magnus Hawker French. He's a trombone player. He's now studying at Trinity. I've done a few gigs with him in Nottingham, and he studies under a really incredible local trombonist called Dennis Rollins. I'm sure you've come across. Uh, and Dennis says of Magnus, he's the future of jazz trombone. And he's a lovely, lovely guy and full of energy and fizzing with ideas. And he happens to live quite close to me. So a couple of summers ago, I said, come to my home studio. Let's record some of this stuff. So he was on board, and we got all his parts down in a couple of days. Uh, and then from there, it's like, right. what else can we do? I'd make little mixtapes of work in progress ideas, and I'd drive around on my way to gigs in like Lincolnshire or wherever it was, listening to my work in progress, and suddenly go, right, I know what I want on this. I want to get Rachel Foster, who's one of the singers I've worked with, to come in and like, hey, perhaps you could write some words to some of this stuff. She'd already written some words to a tune I'd done with Sharp Little Bones called Downfall, and she came up with just the most incredible melody, beautiful words that borrowed from various like religious writings. I don't think she thinks of herself as, particularly belonging to a religion, but she was inspired by poetry from Rumi, from the Baha'i faith, and from the Bible, and from the Quran, and just finding all these like little strands of words that all essentially say the same thing. And she weaved it together into this beautiful like poem and sang it on top of Downfall. And so we recorded that and put that on the Electric Gumbo record. And she also recorded a song about the passing of her mother, which is called Get Back. And so that's on there. Um, and yeah, just there was a couple of students at the uni who were just really good eggs, great trombone players. A guy called Paul Emmett, someone called Emily Shell, and I got them on Get Back, playing some horns. Um, and I was just reaching out to all sorts of people. Great trumpet player, band leader called Benny Lee. It's like, oh, I've got an idea for a trumpet part on Mobius. Can you play that for me? So he was doing stuff in his home studio and sending parts in. Uh, a guy called Tom Whitworth who plays everything. He's an amazing musician, plays trumpet and guitar, but he plays saxophone on a track called Bracket. Um, Paul Dietz, who plays in Sharp Little Bones, brought him in to play some Fender Rhodes and some synth on various things. And yeah, before we know it, we've got like 19 musicians on this record.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's
So
wild. So
mm.
let me ask you this. What was the first live show that you saw? We talked about the live element. What was the first live show that blew you away?
That I went to see,
Yeah.
first live show that blew me away.
Or one of the first ones that was
Yeah.
profound.
Okay. I mean, this is a question I ask people all the time. Like I ask my students, what was a significant musical memory? But I have so many to choose from. Um, one that sort of springs to mind was seeing uh, uh, Jan Garbarek and Miroslav Vitu and Airto Moreira in Arras, which is a town north of Paris, in the jazz festival there. There was something about that that was magical, and seeing Miroslav Vitu really turned me on to playing upright bass. I was an electric bass player for a couple of years, and I was into like Jaco Pastorius and Headhunters, especially, and Paul Jackson, that kind of funky jazz stuff. But yeah, seeing Miroslav really opened my eyes to what you could do on an upright bass. So there's that, among many others.
Yeah. So let me
Mm.
ask you this. What gets you up every day to be a creator, to create this music, and to also educate the future? What is that motivation for you every day?
hmm It's a complex answer. Uh, I must admit, I haven't really thought about hugely, but I guess it's um, uh, I do it for my family. I do it to make a living. I do it to to inspire the students. I do it uh, to scratch an itch, to create music that I would want to hear. Um, yeah, that's it, and
Okay.
to create the opportunity
Yeah.
to do what we were talking about earlier, which is to get on stage with people and create those magical moments, you know.
What do you try to teach your kids, the students about the music that you're creating, the industry, just in general? What do you really want to impart on them?
Again, these are great questions, but but they don't necessarily elicit simple answers.
Right.
So you're talking about students that I teach at
Yeah.
university.
Yeah.
hmm Uh, to I like to think of. myself as not necessarily teaching them specific things, but to accompany them on a journey through their degree programs in such wise that they uh, can, I mean, obviously with any kind of higher education, you're trying to provide a skill set, transferable skills that they can use in any job. Of course, digital skills, all of that stuff. But I guess my secret plan is to encourage them uh, to be true to themselves, that they're all unique, that they all can make unique music. That um, I sort of did a guest lecture recently where I was talking about this electric gumbo project and uh, kind of realizing that actually when I'm writing music for myself, and I use that term, it's not, I don't mean that selfishly, but
Right.
when I'm writing music for to scratch my own creative itch, that to without thinking about the like commercial side of things, that that's when you can create music that's honest. Um, and as a result, the kind of music that I create that is um, that's more honest tends to be more successful and translates to other people either on record or in a live situation.
Yeah.
And so it's about finding their own way. And I guess you have to, in if you study composition, you have to learn how to write a fugue or learn about a sonata form and use analysis to work out what did the great composers do, and that is completely valid. But where I step in with my composition teaching is more about working with students individually to bring out their own creative voice. And I think in this era where AI can replace most of us in so many areas, I'm hoping that the currency in the future will be honest, um, authentic music.
Yeah.
And that's what jazz has in spades, isn't it?
Yeah. So let me ask you this. At the end of the day, Simon, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, fans, students, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Who do I think I am? I'm evolving. I'm trying to get better as a human being. I'm trying to be a good person, a big good human, an artist. Um, yeah, yeah. I don't want to say I'm a polymath, but maybe I'm spread thinly across, educator, composer, producer, recording engineer, um, professional musician, father, member of the community, member of the human race.
Yeah.
In a way, that's to my detriment because it's taken me so long to get to a point now where, which in many cases, I wish I'd been at a lot earlier in my life.
Yeah.
But I say that without regret, really, because without having spent, 10 years producing other people's music in studios and not working on my own stuff, I could look back and say, well, that was a waste of time, wasn't it? Why wasn't I pursuing my own, why didn't I have the guts to pursue my own music? But I could also say, well, that gave me a really useful skill set in terms of production, in terms of being a recording engineer, so that I can now get a drummer in to record and get a really nice drum sound, and I can mix my music and I can take control of all sides of the production, which is what I did with the Electric Gumbo record,
Yeah.
from writing it, conceptualizing it, through to recording it, through to mixing it, through to mastering it, and ultimately, releasing it, being in charge of all aspects of that. And that's not so much of me being a megalomaniac. It's I guess, it's as much of a budgetary concern as anything else, isn't it?
Yeah, certainly is. So if anyone wants to pick up a copy of the album, they want to catch
Mhm.
you live, any of the good news in your world, where do they go?
So, Yeah, good question. I've got a website which is simonpatterson.com, one T in Patterson, or electricgumbo.com. It all goes to the same place. Sharp Little Bones, which is my other band. Um, I've got a Bandcamp, so if you search for Electric Gumbo on Bandcamp, you can pick up a limited edition, a red 180-gram vinyl, or you can pick up a gatefold digipack CD, or you can buy it digitally. In terms of live, then yeah, same place. I'll make sure I publicise all the gigs. We've got quite a few gigs coming up with the Sharp Little Bones, and we're just about to go into the studio to record our next album. With Electric Gumbo, we've done the launch gig. We're going to play at Lincoln Jazz Festival on the 6th of July on a Sunday evening. So we're really looking forward to that. And I'm hoping to get some more dates booked very soon.
Very cool. Simon, this has been wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with the release and everything else, man. This has been great.
Amazing. Well, really good to talk to you.
Jazz fans, Joe Domino here, the host of the weekly Neon Jazz radio show and regular interview series being produced and distributed from Lee Summit, Missouri. We are very excited to let you know about the second annual Lee Summit Jazz Festival taking place again this summer on June 28th at the Bridge Space, located at 210 Southwest Market Street in downtown Lee Summit. Following the success of the 2024 festival, the lineup will include Lee Summit students, KC Area Youth Jazz, Paganova with Michael Pagan, Horoscope with Stan Kessler, Brad Gregory, Adam Larson, and the Lee Summit Jazz Orchestra. There will also be food trucks and vendors to round out a day of celebration. Early bird tickets are 2 for $30, and all details can be found at lsjazzfest.com. We can't wait to see you there.